Well, hello, that's me again. Today is December 14th, 2023. First thing, people tell me to say this, but you know what? Let me say this. And my saying is that, guys, do not forget to support my channel any way you want, including by actually subscribing to it and supporting me on Patreon and buying me a coffee or two. Second, I'm doing this in 1080 format, so I don't know, people constantly ask me to do it because evidently many watch me on their mobile devices such as their cell phones. So here it is. I'll try to find the optimal way to do it, but evidently also 1080 is a little bit too high. I might try to go for 720 next time, but you please comment also on what you see and how you see it, because the requests are pretty consistent for now. Now, let's not kind of waste our time and let's go immediately to some news, obviously, which, of course, Vladimir Putin gave this 4-hour-long interview. Well, it's basically pressy, and answered the questions for a number of hours from different corners of Russia and the world, essentially. And that brings us to special military operation, and the fact that very many people have to understand that Vladimir Putin was pretty much clear about the fact that southeast of Ukraine have been traditionally, historically, they were Russian territories. Odessa is a Russian city, so that tells you everything you need to know about the basically plans. But what was most remarkable, and for many people they might have just missed it, but Vladimir Putin was commenting on the situation on Krinky, left bank, which is, of course, where it's just meat grinder there. And his admission was actually, well, shocking in a good way, because he said, I came to, Gerasimov, the chief of general staff, came to me and we started talking. I say, why don't we push them away from the left bank? And Gerasimov says, why? Let them continue to try to do this idiotic, self-defeating operation, which of course they do for PR reasons in Kiev regime, and obviously they try to sell this garbage to basically in the West, in the United States especially. So, and so, yeah, basically let them come, and that's what's happening. People who report from there, they say it's a horror picture, nothing like you will ever see in your life, because it's just littered with body. It's a piles of body, and now they're reduced there for, I don't know, 100 or under 100. So basically one company there, and they are being reduced because obviously they continue to try to resupply. Most of those dinghies and all kinds of other floating devices, are being sunk sometimes without even Russian participations. They just sink in the middle of Dnieper River. So, yeah, this is what everything you need to know. And that brings us, obviously, when you look also at Vladimir Putin, who's supposed to be dying from whatever, and he looks fresh, he looks absolutely energized, and so that there so much for their primarily British and American tabloids saying that he is dying. And of course, if you look attentively at people who really provide this information to, you will understand who those people are. And that brings us, me actually, to a delightful, absolutely delightful thing, which of course I am on record that when I'm saying that American military in general, American ground forces are generally incompetent or not suited for the fight of the serious combined arms warfare, multi-domain operations against real enemies, not to speak about the fact that American hardware, the military hardware, have been discredited completely. The myth was blown out of the water. By the way, there was another parts of the Patriot PAC-3 which have been annihilated this night in Kiev. And here is the Representative Thomas Massey, and he talks to on December 8th to Mr. Kerry. And you have to go to this wide awake media and listen to the snippet. It is delightful. Mr. Massey, who actually has the STEM education, he has Master of Science from MIT, and he holds a truckload of patents, and so he talks about climate change, so to speak, to Mr. Kerry, and he asks him the question, what kind of the scientific background Mr. Kerry has, and Mr. Kerry says that he has the science degree, and Mr. Massey asks him, what kind of science degree do you have? And Kerry responds that he has the political science degree. And Mr. Massey doesn't hold back. He says that it's not science degree, it's liberal art, and it's not real degree, and it's not real science. And here he said, I think it's somewhat appropriate that somebody with a pseudoscience degree is here pushing this agenda of the climate anthropogenic climate change, make emphasis on the anthropogenic, because what they push with this globalist elite and establishment in Washington, primarily DNC, and Biden administration, is that somehow we're driving the climate change. The scientific notion, or pseudoscientific notion, completely basically discredited by serious, real scientists, especially scientists from the climate study. And let me tell you, if somebody climate PhD in the United States wants to go and talk to Russian PhD science on climate, they will be laughing at them. Well, but then again, what do you expect? It's the Washington establishment, it's the consensus of the globalist elites, which are basically continue to push and destroy the republic, what's left of our liberties, our human rights, everything. They want to control us in this respect, and, well, guess what? If you go and look at what many people begin to really ask questions, especially after you have this guy who is a certified moron. His name is Michael McFaul. He was the ambassador to Russia. He screwed it up so badly. He's an ideologue. He's extremely uncultured and uneducated man. He's allegedly a historian. His thesis for degree was laughable. He was talking about some KGB operations in the Central America. I don't know how this really makes him qualified for expressing anything regarding geopolitics, and especially regarding Russia. And here he is. He demonstrates and parades himself as a complete idiot because, well, he is. And look at this. We need clear, when he said Mr. White House, Congress Speaker Mr. Johnson talks about that we need clear articulation of the strategy to allow Ukraine to win. Thus far, their responses have been insufficient. And so the Congress, which of course has the power of the purse, it doesn't release those funds, and doubtly so will do so this year. They probably will release it later, but it wouldn't make any difference really for the outcome. But look at this. This idiot, McFaul, he comes out and begins to draw parallels which are so ridiculous, which are so contrived that I have no words to describe it. It's basically he lies through his teeth. This is what Washington establishment does, and including media. And he talks about, imagine Roosevelt saying this to Churchill in 1940. Speaker Johnson should be leaning more heavily on some experienced foreign policy experts in his caucus for better advice. Well, Michael McFaul and basically there are no foreign policy experts in any of the party, be they Democrats or Republicans, which is essentially a rhino neoliberal globalist party, just with some rhetoric which plays to, for the satisfaction of some not very bright politically people. Hoi polloi, so. And when you have this, suddenly people begin to really ask the questions about this. Today is going to be shown on there. It's still not have not been posted. It's Jack Napolitano will be talking to Scott Horton, and he will be asking are Congress and Biden complicit in war crimes? And they're talking about both Gaza, which is unbelievable destruction. Mr. Putin correctly today basically compared how Russians fight the war and what Israel does there, making Gaza essentially a pile of rubble and unlivable, which is the crime against humanity. And that will be the serious question of which I'm writing since the inception or start of the special military operation. And Judge Napolitano will be talking about, are they complicit? Yes, they are. Biden administration is the one which drives this horror both in Ukraine and in Gaza. And Congress supports this. So are the most corporate American media. But as I already stated, huge portion of those American so-called journalists or from CNN, MSNBC, whoever, they are going to be charged with the war crimes eventually once the tribunal starts. And Russians constantly report on the fact that the tribunal is being discussed, is being initially formed, and they are deciding now what kind of judges will be invited. And it is also basically supports what Mr. Putin says about the actual size of troops which Russia now has at the front lines. And he talks about, he was responding to some complaints about in some small sectors lack of the electronic warfare equipment, which he says it's normal for this such a huge operation. And as he said, yeah, of course we will address this, no problem. But he says that some 617,000 soldiers and officers are fighting Kiev in some capacity, the Russian president said. And Russia is still not out of the reserves. There is a huge reserve force which basically stays behind the lines in Russia proper. And what can I say? And he talks about, I want to repeat myself, the line of contact with Ukraine is more than 2,000 kilometers long. There are now 617,000 people in the combat zone. So, of course, there could be some problems in some places when he was responding. Obviously, Russia solves this as they occur. And what is important here to understand that when you add whatever Mr. Zelensky was selling the BS in Washington, that oh yeah, we have 600,000 troops ourselves at the line of contact. Is it possible? Probably not 600,000, but they definitely have now around probably 300,000 troops, or the remaining of the armed forces of Ukraine, and they lack pretty much everything. They lack shells, they lack the other hardware, tanks. I mean, what are you going to do with the Ukrainian tanks? The Russian Air Force is out there waiting for them. Lancet drones and Scalpel drones, which begin to arrive now, are there. So what do? And as I already stated in the last video, they have Mr. Aguta, the 3-star general, sending to Ukraine to, so to speak, start controlling and commanding those troops. It's not going to help, and Aguta is chosen to keep the bag full of crap once this thing over, because the United States has simply no resources, human or military hardware, economic, political, whatever, to fight Russians. They never had. It's just that now it became very clear. And here what he talks about, actually on December 12th, Aguta, he says, Russia is jamming U.S. precision weapons in Ukraine, U.S. general says. General also highlighted Russia's very adaptive forces. Well, yeah, I wrote about adaptation of, if you read my book or the Real Revolution on Military Affairs, I wrote about that adaptability is the key in this. When you look attentively at how U.S. Army and the whole armed forces are formed and shaped, their TOE, Table of Organization and Equipment, it is not adaptable force. It never was. The reason they are not and will not be like that, because they never had to fight a serious enemy. But here, Mr. Agut Aguta says that since December 2022, Aguta has led Security Assistance Group Ukraine, the umbrella organizations for coordinating allied military aid to Ukraine. No, it wasn't just military aid. It was also command and control functions, and it was operational planning, which is a disaster. They don't know how to plan for the modern war in Pentagon, let alone in London. And he talks about that unidentified U.S. defense officials previously told CNN that Russia was jamming U.S.-provided precision missiles, causing them to go astray. U.S. and Ukrainian forces consequently had to create workarounds, such as modifying the rocket launchers. Russia then modified its jamming, forcing the United States to again find countermeasures. But the point is, it's pretty much at the end of the rope, so to speak. And if you continue to read this fresh article, they admit that basically Russia fields many advanced jamming capabilities, including some jammers that can block GPS signals at ranges of up to 15 miles. Ukrainian soldiers have reported that Russian jammers frequently down their drones. Now, Aguda said the Pentagon needs to improve its arms and gear to be resilient enough and flexible enough to be able to counter what our adversaries do. Within weeks or months of us employing something on the battlefield, our adversaries can find ways to either disrupt or counter some of these capabilities. Here we have to explain, which I wrote three and a half now. I'm kind of going to the middle of my fourth book. It's impossible to improve. That's what they do not understand. There is no culture which exists in Pentagon and operational planning level, which takes into account anything but total domination of the United States in the air. The United States, God forbids, if the U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force wants to fight Russians, they're not going to have that. And after that, it's not a secret. Even the recent Wall Street Journal article, I will not be showing it here, but you can find it yourself. It writes about the fact that probably 2 days, 3 days, and United States will run out of precision-guided munitions, and then in 2 weeks it will be over. It will be jammed, and then whatever the positioning of the American troops, this is what if scenario who people asking me to do. It's going to be horrible. And I already stated, can United States take the 3,600 casualties a day? It cannot. It will be a revolution here. And the point here, they at least know some of those people. So Aguta and his staff of those planners and those American generals and colonels will be sent to Ukraine to try to, I don't know, maybe reorganize the defense. But it's all useless when you don't have tools. And Pentagon doesn't have tools. They don't have hardware. They don't have TOE, table of organization equipment, to fight real serious combined arms multi-domain war with the peer or peer opponent. And they don't have basically instruments to stop half of the Russian weapons. Basically, they have nothing to stop it. And that brings me to the point of what I usually don't want to do it, but you already know, I already showed Michael McFault, the guy who wouldn't be able to hold the conversation with any real specialist in Russia, let alone in any competent Russian other than what he said, Liberdad, this so pro-Western liberal circles. He shuffled himself while in Moscow because they will laugh at him at his level of command of language. He barely speaks any Russian. He doesn't know Russian history, and of course he is not military man, and he doesn't have STEM education, which is a prerequisite for at least beginning to grasp the ideas and fundamental principles of the modern warfare, which is high tech. And here I have this guy. I stumbled accidentally on this dude. Look at this. He spreads the same garbage. U.S. and by the way, he takes it from the Moscow sewer, which is the bunch of the imbeciles working in the Moscow Times, all kinds of the, what is called foreign agents. But, he spreads this BS, which is, of course, have been thrown in. No, it's not intelligence. It's all lies, which are made up by sore losers in CIA and Pentagon. And he said that Intel says 315K Russian casualties in Ukraine. Congress source. source. No, it's not Congress source. It is all made up. It's garbage which was spread, for the visit of Zelensky, trying to push through the package of $61 billion, which wouldn't help anyway. So because United States simply doesn't have hardware to give anymore, neither do Europeans, and they will not have it for few years now. But here we have, and Russia has lost 90% of their pre-invasion force. So I was looking like, and yeah, I looked at this guy, and his name is Jake Bro. And when I look at him, he spreads absolutely ridiculous garbage, which testifies to the fact that he is absolutely ignorant. He is absolutely illiterate militarily. Yet guess what? Who he is? As it turned out, the dude is actually here it is. Here's the basically CV of this guy. Hey all. Well, yeah, that's good. I mean, that's the officer. I am a first lieutenant in the Air Force that commissioned through OTS back in June 2016. My name is Jake Bro. He's talking about 01, 02 positions, which, by the way, I held in my life, equivalents, and held even higher position than that. But point is, channel name is my name, Jake Bro. Feel free to ask me questions about pay rate. So he goes, and I go and listen to what his background in the, Air Force and all the things, and how he knows how Russians lose, what is their profession really, what kind of the background in terms of the operational planning he has, how does he know how to calculate general, rate of the attrition. And he's talking about here military officer pay, what does a lieutenant make, 01, 02, and he talks about, and guess what, his background, he is an English teacher. And that is why you have his Korean flag there. He taught English in Korea. I have no problems with English teacher. Fact is, being American citizen, I actually think that United States needs a lot of, many English teachers, because English language is the main language of the land, and it has to remain so. But the point is, I never saw English teachers understanding how to fight the real war, despite the fact that guy, guess what he graduated from? If you go to the whatever the OTS is. And that explains to you why United States has issues. And here's the OTS structure. Look at this. It is Officer Training School, formerly known as Basic Officer Training, BOT, and later Total Force Officer Training, FOT. Is the more traditional 8-week pre-commissioning program, previously a 13-week program, later reduced to 10 weeks. They renamed FOT, track transition to a 9-week program. And when you read this, and can anybody explain to me, how can you prepare even the level of the platoon commander in 9 weeks? And I'm talking about for real war, not some garbage for police operations, or as Tom Cotton talked about, he was a lawyer, he enlisted, got himself from the officer training school and went to fight in Afghanistan. Well, it's not really fight, they do still sustained casualties there, but it was nothing like this. It's a police operation of high intensity, and they never really had any control of the situation. But here it is. This is the guy who comes out, he is the humanities liberal arts dude who wouldn't know crap from Shinola, and I'm not talking about American-made watches. So what do you expect? I don't know, maybe they pay him, but here is the so-called specialist, and that is why it's very difficult to communicate or discuss them. They, for example, wouldn't discuss me because they know I would wipe the floor with them, exposing their ignorance, and I'm talking about military ignorance, because, well, you know what, when you have to spend, like Mr. Gerasimov, 9 years academically in the top-notch military schools, and having the tank and engineering degree in in armored warfare, for starters, as a background, and then all kinds of the academies, including Academy of the General Staff, which provides you PhD in military sciences and some other subject. So you know what? I'm sorry, guys. Did he command anything? He evidently works in Air Force somewhere in some capacity. Probably some kind of, I have no idea. I really don't know. But here we have the guy with zero background in real serious military, zero background in the military culture, which produces constantly the necessity to study for the real warfare. You come in anywhere into the military academy in Russia as a young kid, 18, 19, sometimes you get 20-year-olds. And you run through the 5 years, through the engineering and military engineering courses and through the combined arms and tactical preparation. As I already stated, for example, any naval academy in Russia, you graduated, guess what? Your second thing is the platoon commander, your second specialty is the platoon commander of Marines. And that's what I have. And guess what? You spend a lot of time in the Marine Corps, or not Marine Corps, Marines units. You study the actually tactics of the Marines, which is very much in common with the combined arms. And of course, you go through the firing and preparation of the officer or the tactical level for Marines. That is why many of my classmates, I would say at least 10, they went and served in Chechnya, for example, commanding such unit formations as regiments in the first Chechnya war, and the regiments of Marines. And guess what? They were, from my classmates. So I'm not going to tell you who they are. I know who they are. So there you go. And they commanded it successfully. Then they served with the second Chechnya. Now, of course, we are old farts. Not all of us can do any kind of the front line duties. Some go, but they primarily immediately, also my friends, they are primarily relegated to the real duty, so to speak. But still, and the point is that when you have this level of the competence, the same as John Kerry has in regarding to the climate change, and he will not be able to simplest differential equation with the separable variables. He would know what it is, let alone if you talk about Markov chains and Markov processes, which are crucial in understanding, for example, in operational planning and strategic planning, and how you form those probabilities, transitional matrices, how you do those things. These are not very difficult, really, if you have the background, but that's the problem. None of them has any of this background. They have only background in political sciences, in literature. You remember one of the American admirals, he has a degree in literature. So, and when you look at this, it just, how else can I explain it? That is why they cannot fight. And Aguto and his advisors who are being sent to Ukraine, they are basically there to, how to put it, not good. What, for example, even when such neocon and the guy also is fanatical Russophobe, and Admiral Stavridis, former NATO commander-in-chief, reveals it was, as you see yourself today, how Zelensky disappointed the United States. Well, the United States should have been known what they're getting themselves into. But here it is. And he says, and I quote him, "We must honestly admit the lack of success in the offensive of the armed forces." Finally, somebody calls it correctly because it was offensive. Of Ukraine this summer. It really failed. The attack of the Ukrainians bogged down. This has led to disappointment. Zelensky is a completely different position than a year ago, he said. Stavridis also stressed that the situation is developing in the best way for the President Vladimir Putin. I don't know why all of them are, well, I understand kind of why, because they understand who Mr. Putin is, and they understand there will never be anything like him. But they have this obsession with Putin, but it's never was about Putin being in any position. From the inception, from the February 2024, I already stated, it's over for Ukraine and the West. The only difference, which was, I made a mistake saying that they're probably gonna go full Monty. At that time, I did know that actually there was a serious diplomatic activity in Istanbul, which was sabotaged by the United States and this moron Boris Johnson. as a messenger. And but the point is that it was just a matter of the method, and Russians went for the full-blown attrition mode. And guess what? It's all about annihilating Ukraine as a state now, which obviously involves annihilating completely the mobilizational potential. And if United States wants to get involved in this war, having no means, no experience, no nothing. I mean, look at the American air defense. Good God, how are you going to even fight it? And yeah, they think that F-16 is such a great plane. It's a sexy looking aircraft, but it's nowhere near modern Russian combat aircraft, no matter how they update it. And when you look at that, and what can I say? There is a panic, and nothing could be done about it. Again, short of United States getting involved in war with Russia, which will require probably a year or couple years of preparing and drafting people to have appropriate force to do anything about it, and which still gonna lose. And you know what? If United States goes nuclear, which is I'm on record, United States is nuclear biased nation because of the conventional weakness of its forces. So yeah, well, it will end in the World War III, and there you go, you know, so the United States will be turned in the parking lot. So, and that is the whole thing. I understand their pain. I understand them being sore losers, but this is the real state of the affairs. And the question is not, it never was about Ukraine. The question which I constantly stress, it was all about NATO, and it was about basically defeating the United States, or rather the globalist cabal, which now is deeply rooted in Washington, D.C. and has no interest of American people in its heart whatsoever. They work for bankers, they work for military-industrial complex, they have neither mine nor yours interest in whatsoever. And the horrible situation of this whole thing is that mostly they are ignorant, they are badly educated, because American education, higher education in terms of liberal arts, is an utter sheer disaster. And they believe that they can fight wars. They cannot. And now that you have this myth of American power being blown out of the water, well, guess what? Strategy, big time strategy, state strategy comes into play, and let me tell you, United States is not good at it. So, and that's what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And what can I say? I will be talking about more and read the news. I'm just trying to create some framework for you, and what can I say? It's getting hot out there. So, guys, have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.